So I'm going to do some fault finding on this amp today. So it's relatively new. So this is a DSL40CR. I picked it up a few weeks ago, and as you can hear, it works fine on the low mode. There's a little bit of hiss. That is on the red gain channel, but on the whole it does work okay. If you use it for a long time, it does get a little bit intermittent. I won't sort of test that and try and get it onto the video, but if you turn it onto the high mode, so it's got this constant sort of irregular noise coming out of it. So this is on the clean channel now, and changing the volume doesn't actually make much difference. So before I carry on and try to fix it, I'll take you through my initial fault finding. I'll just turn that back onto low for a second. So as you might know, this amp's got 4 preamp tubes and it's got 2 power tubes. So the way it works is you have your input, it goes through the 4 preamp tubes, so that's like a pre-gain. One of them is only brought in during the ultra-gain section. Part of it is the reverb, and then part of it is a phase inverter. It then goes through the effects loop, and then it goes through the master volumes. So these are just potentiometers really, and then it goes into the the power amp tubes before finally making it to the speaker. If this was the preamp tubes making quite a lot of noise, so all of that section there, I would have expected the master volume to make some difference in the volume of this noise, but it isn't. It hasn't actually changed anything at all. Obviously if you put it onto the red channel, the hiss will come, but you'd get that anyway. You'd get that on the low channel. So it seems to be something from the power amp tubes onwards, or certainly downstream of the master volumes anyway. So I'm just going to do another check now. So I'm going to plug my pedal board in, make sure it's not too loud. Oh. Take 2, plug my pedal board in. So one of the pedals I have is, I'll get a picture of it later, it's a preamp pedal, and you'll have to press the I believe here. But one of my pedals is plugged directly into the effects loop return. So essentially that cuts out all of the preamp, and actually it cuts out this as well. So there's no input at all, and it's coming straight into the effects loop return through the master volumes and then through the speaker. So I'll just show you that to prove it. I'll just engage it now. And if I were to unplug this, it doesn't make any difference. And also these volumes here don't make any difference. Obviously that one does, because that's the master amp. So what I've done there, and I suppose most importantly, you can still hear the noise. So even with the guitar turned all the way down, the preamp pedal plugged into the effects loop return is still making the noise. So that's led me to think it's probably the power amp tubes. That's quite an easy fix, albeit quite an expensive one. But it means hopefully I won't have to go into these circuit boards. I'm going to turn it around, do a couple more checks, and then hopefully I can fix it. Standard warning here, it says it here, look, risk of electric shock, don't open. So there's 240 volts behind here in various places, and there are capacitors and things like that. So just opening this is relatively safe, but be careful with it. If you're going to end up going into this section here, where the exposed circuit board is, it only gets a lot more dangerous, and if you start poking around your fingers, you could get an electric shock. So let's open it up. So I asked the seller how old this is, and he said it was about 3 years old and it hasn't been used very much. Now that screw wasn't all the way in, so that means it's probably been open at some point. Now whether that means it's been sort of damaged or messed about with, I'm not sure, because it is in pretty much brand new condition. And I have bought a pair of power tubes in anticipation of a replacement anyway, but we're going to just check it first. And if I don't need to replace them, that's great, because I'll keep them as spares. Okay, 6 screws open. Right, there's that delicious Celestian speaker. Hold on, I'll get a torch. Okay, the back of the amp. So these four at the back here are the preamp tubes, so sort of V1 to V4 they're called. I guess that shrouded one is V1, but I don't actually know. And these two, I forget the number of them, I'll put them on the screen. There's two different names for them. ECC83 is it? And these two bigger ones are the two power tubes, the EL34s. So one little check you can do is if you get something soft, like a pen or the end of a screwdriver or something, the soft end of a screwdriver, and just tap them gently, you might be able to hear some sort of noise and harmonics. And if you do, that means that that tube is probably on its way out. So let's just do that now. Clearly you have to turn it back on, so be careful. Okay, it's on the red channel. You can see them just glowing there now. I'll start with the power tubes. Nothing. Right, so I gave him a tap, no sound, so I suppose that's not the best start, as that could have been a nice smoking gun. I'll just try it on the high setting now. Right, there's that lovely noise again. Okay, well we've checked it, so giving them a tap doesn't do anything, so let's try the new tube, see if that sorts it, and if not, we'll have to look at before I go and change the tubes and touch them. They run quite hot. I don't actually know how hot, so let's just... well, you could burn yourself on that. So I've bought JJ tubes. There's a few different brands of these. These JJs are supposed to be like the originals that Marshall use. You can get sort of different Sovtech, Russian ones are quite popular, or there's some really expensive sort of like boutique ones and stuff like that, but I can't think I'd notice a difference. Made in the Slovak Republic. So as you can see, these are a matched pair. So we'll see it in a second, but when you put them in, you have to bias them using a multimeter. So getting a matched pair helps the bias be a bit closer, I think. I think it does some other stuff as well. I'm not really sure of the intricacies of this. But what I'll do is, before I take these out, I'll check the bias on these two tubes, see what that looks like. So tapping the tubes didn't make any sound come out of it. That doesn't necessarily mean that the power tubes are good though. So what I'm going to do is, just out of interest really, I'm going to check what the bias is of the existing tubes before changing them. So two tubes here, and underneath here, I'll show you in a second, there's a bias point. So I'm just going to lay it down on the front because it's a bit easy to access. So in order to check them, you need the amp turned on and set to high mode. So here's the test ports here. So one of these is for one of the tubes and one is for the other one. Logic would dictate that one was this and this one was this, but I don't actually know that for a fact. And then you've got the common in the middle, and these screws will just adjust the bias. One thing to remember, while we do want to measure milliamps, because it's a 35 milliamp, so the Marshall spec is 35 milliamps. Some people run them about 37, 38 if they want it to sound a bit warmer, and some people run it lower. I think if you run it at higher current, it'll wear the tubes out quicker. But anyway, I'm going to aim for the Marshall spec, which is 35 milliamps. When you're measuring in here, you don't measure milliamps. If anyone's used a multimeter before, hopefully you have, you can see here you've got the amp side is fused at 10 amps. So when you connect these two, it's a very low resistance. If you were to put that across a voltage source, V equals IR. So if the resistance is 0 and you've got 200 volts in here or more, current's going to go to, well, 10 to infinity if this is 0 ohms. If you've got a cheap one of these, it can explode, but at least it's going to blow the fuse. So anyway, this behind here, there's a 1 ohm resistor. So it means that you can measure the voltage millivoltage, and you can safely just directly convert that to milliamps. So there's your electricity lesson. So we're going to set it to volts DC. That's the logo there. Oh, hang on, that's because I'm in volts, not millivolts. Okay, millivolts DC, take 2. So one's 55. That's a lot higher than I expected. Maybe it's because it's failed. I don't know. Let's try the other one. 52. I'm going to double check the specs and then come back to you. Right, so I checked the specs, and it's definitely supposed to be 35. So let's just show you again if you can see that. So we've got 55 there. So I will try adjusting the bias. So that's all the way down. Okay, so that's. I don't know if you can see that moving there, just in real time. That's 34. Let's get to the other one now. Okay. Well, I mean, the bias is now approximately correct. You can actually do them by hand. I'm going to just try it again. Now I've corrected it. I can't think why those would be set like that. Anyway, let's just try it before I get the new ones in. Okay. So that's the low mode. Let's try it in high. It is still there. The noise is still there. It's not anywhere near as bad as it was, I will admit. I think it sounds a bit better actually. I'll have to. I normally use it on a stand. I've only been using it on low mode, but I think I'll have to do a bit more testing. I think it sounds a bit better. I think it was sounding really sort of fizzy and almost a bit nasal before. Just wondering whether to put the new tubes in just to test them. Okay. I'm going to put the new tubes in. Running these existing tubes at that high voltage or high current, I presume has done some damage to them. So just to really bottom out what that noise is, I'm going to stick the new ones in, and I mean, it is sort of, I say it's usable, it is actually pretty annoying having that there. I'm just going to put the new tubes in and see if that just fixes it, and that way we'll know. So I've just put it onto standby, then I've left it for a minute or two to cool down, and I've turned it off. So I'll make sure the tubes are nice and cool, and I'll put these in. Okay, these stay hot for quite a while, but as long as they're under sort of 60 degrees, you're not going to burn yourself on them. I'll turn that off. So on the two power tubes, there are these little clips. So I think you just pull them back and wriggle out. Okay, one tube. You can see these are the JJs again. But yeah, interestingly, they're both marked with 55. So I'm just trying to, before I put the unit in, figure this out a bit. So you can see they're marked with Marshall. So I think that means they're the factory tube. And I've just asked ChatGPT about this because I couldn't find any information online. So this 55, I think, will have been some sort of a factory test of how they set these tubes before they put them into the amp. But that doesn't mean that you should bias these within this amp to 55. So either it's been set wrong at the Marshall factory, or someone's had a gander at these and thought this is what they need to set them to, if someone's messed about in the back here. I'll probably never know that now, but yeah, let's just stick the new ones in. Okay, I've just unwrapped the new ones. So you see they're not branded with Marshall, but they've got the same JJ on them, EL34. So I might just do a sanity check to make sure they're the same. So bought the match pair from Hot Rocks UK, not sponsored or anything. And they sent this match pair, so they've where Hotworks have done their calibration and tested it. They both say the same, by the way. So they burnt it in, plate current is 72. Maybe that's what this 55 is, possibly. So this tube's a little bit hotter, and the, hang on, what's this for now? I had to Google this, by the way. This is the transconductance. 11.5 means it changes the current by 11.5 milliamps for every volt of grid voltage changed in their test setup. Don't know what any of that means, but this was the bench test for this valve, and they've done the other one in the same way. So to insert these, you've got 7 pins and then a blank one. And you can see the middle plastic bit's got like this little key in there. So you see there, well, it's actually the top. So just make sure the key is lined up and then just insert these. It's like fitting a light bulb, always worried about pressing onto glass. Okay, they're both nice and tight. So now it's time to bias them. So what I'm going to do, just to completely reduce the stress on these, I'm going to turn these all the way down first, just so I can bring them up to voltage, just so I don't expose it to the higher current straight away. I don't expect it matters for a few seconds, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to turn it on. I'm going to do an initial bias. I'm then going to leave it for, let's say, 5 minutes. I'm then going to just check it hasn't drifted, do the final tweak, and then put the back onto it. So let's do that now. Right, so stand by at the minute. They're just starting to glow, so that's just the preheater in them glowing. Okay, so about a minute has passed now, so I'll just put that, I'm going to put it straight onto high mode. That's a brilliant first sign because there's no sound coming out of it whatsoever, which is fantastic. So everything's looking good, but let's just bias it now. So actually that's almost, strangely, that's almost on maximum. So completely unlike the other tube. So I turned that nearly all the way up and it was sort of getting on 38, 39. So whether the tubes had started to break and that was what caused it to drift, I don't know. But anyway, what we'll do is set these. Okay, so that one's at 33. That one's at 36, so just take that one down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to just make a brew and then I'll come back and see where they are. It's been about 5 minutes, a bit more than that. I've made my brew. Well, actually, Jeremy Clarkson made this brew in the Cotswolds somewhere. So what I'll do, I'll just put that away from the mains electricity. I'll see how the old millivolts are getting on. It's actually pretty stable, so I'll just bring it up to 35. I mean, I'm not going to get it exact, but yeah, 35.1, and that one's gone up a little bit. 35.2. So one side is 35.3, the other side 35.2, 0.1. So that's close enough. Okay, that all seems to be in order. Okay, let's get the back on it. Okay, so all works fine, and when you put it on high, no noise. So that's brilliant. Yeah, nothing more to add. That's the power tubes all along. That's fixed. Hopefully, if your power tubes go, you can fix them as well.